I'm grateful to be on a Google Meet with some of the Integrity Music staff. They've been so gracious to join us here and to answer the questions that you guys have sent in, whether it's been through songwriters workshops or emails or other communications with us. And so I wanted to, first of all, just thank them and then let them have an opportunity to introduce themselves, what their role is, and then we'll start to dive into some of the questions. So welcome. Thank you guys. If we can go we'll start with Jonathan.
My name is Jonathan Lane. I've been with Integrity Music for 19 years now. And I started out in church licensing, worked my way up through copyrights, dealing with songwriters, artists, producers, and I oversee our copyright and licensing areas, as well as our contracts and legal business affairs. So that is me.
I'm Kara Cunningham. I am a copyright coordinator at Integrity. I've been here for almost a year now, approaching that. Still fairly new, but I work directly under Jonathan Lane, so anything that I do is overseen by him, but I handle more of the basic administration of copyright matters like song registrations and communicating with our administrator capital and CCLI and PROs and whatnot. So all of that is taken care of by me.
I'm Susan Gates. I've been with Integrity a little over 3 years, and my area focuses on licenses, handling all of our non-commercial license requests that come in, and then also requesting all of the licenses for outside songs on our projects, so doing all the clearance work. And along with that, I also do copyright registrations and help with our royalty processing.
Awesome. Well, as you can see, we have the subject matter experts with the experience and the credentials to handle all these questions. So actually, why don't you get us started with some of the questions that came in for us?
If I'm getting ready to release music for the very first time, what is the absolute first thing that I should do?
The very first thing you should do is know who owns the songs that you're about to release and record. If you wrote the songs yourselves and you're not signed to a label or to a publisher, you own that yourself and you don't need to do anything. But if you are signed to a publisher, you probably need to get that publisher's permission, or if you're recording someone else's songs, you need to get a license from that publisher or their administrator.
Definitely, if you you want to make sure you have those clearances from any outside publishers for use of their portion of the song on your projects.
And if a church is maybe unfamiliar with making those requests or getting those permissions, like what would that look like?
Well, it's going to depend on what country they're in, because different countries have different copyright laws, different rates, things like that. In the U.S., you would need to locate the publisher. And there are places you can go online to look those up, like ascap.com and bmi.com. And CCLI.com has a few of those on their site, though it's kind of hard to find the contact information on their sites, but ASCAP and BMI have contact information a little more readily available. Outside the U.S., like in the U.K., most of that goes through PRS. And I think most of the countries in Europe also go through societies like that. Each country has their own, but I think PRS has agreements with a lot of countries around the world that kind of reach over into different countries. Australia has apra.com. It's just different countries like that. If you're outside the U.S., you can just Google the country in Mechanical Recording Society, and it should come up with the result of where you can search.
What is the most basic thing I can do to copyright my song?
First of all, there's a distinction between copywriting and registering your copyright. So the minute that you've committed that song to paper, you've recorded it, it's copyrighted. And what you can do is you can put the year and your name on whatever that medium is, and there's your copyright. Registering your copyright, for example, here in the United States, we would submit an application to the United States Copyright Office, giving them all the details and then sending them a submission, a deposit copy of the work. And it's officially registered with them. Why would you do that? In case there was ever an infringement claim, then the documentation would be on file for that.
Awesome, that's super helpful. So just to double back on that, so if I'm hearing you correctly, at the point of composition, your song is copyrighted. And as long as you have some kind of record or documentation of that composition at the point of completion, it's fine. However, making that a matter of public record is going through the proper channels wherever you are to make sure that it's recognized. Yeah.
What year should I put when I write my song, and what is the significance of that year in a copyright? Notice. Notice. Thank you. Yes.
And it depends on what country you're in. In the U.S., that year represents the date of first publication, which is the date that it was first made available to the public. Usually outside the U.S., that year signifies when the song was completed or created. So it depends on what country the song is coming from and what that year means, but those are the two meanings.
What is the benefit of registering with CCLI?
Really, it doesn't benefit someone to register with CCLI until their songs are being sung by multiple churches in a wide region. So if a song's only being sung in your home church and nowhere else, CCLI is really not going to benefit you. So where that comes in beneficial is when your song starts traveling outside of your own church to other churches, other countries, other cities, things like that, so that you can kind of track it. The CCLI kind of has rules about that as well, where they want to accept songs that are not being sung widely. And their definition of sung widely can kind of vary, so it's best to kind of talk to them. If you feel like your song is traveling, give them a call, tell them what's happening, and they'll tell you if it's time to register or not.
And would you say it's probably, obviously there's going to be variables in terms of what CCLI will accept based upon what you just said, but let's say, just as a best practice for a church to go ahead and try to register, if possible. And the reason why I asked that is because I've had several churches ask, like, okay, well, I have this song, I'm not quite sure how far it's traveling or how widely it's being sung, but I've had other people request information for the song, and I don't know what to tell them. Like, I'm just got like, there's like, I want to look you up, and it's like, well, I'm not there. So
well, if you're getting questions like that, then yeah, definitely give CCLI a call and see if they'll take the song, tell them what's going on,
Gotcha.
And more than likely they'll take the song.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. Awesome. Ashley, what's our next one?
Yes. So, what is a PRO, and why should I register my songs with them?
A PRO is a performing rights organization, kind of like Jonathan mentioned. ASCAP.com, BMI.com, CSAC is another one, but ASCAP and BMI are probably the two major ones. They collect and distribute royalties to publishers and writers for performance usage. So writers, it's pretty important for them to register themselves if they're not signed to a publisher, because oftentimes if their songs are being performed live to big audiences, then those PROs are in charge of going and collecting those royalties, and they distribute directly to writers aside from just distributing everything to the publisher, if that makes sense. We get a lot of questions from our administrator about writer PROs and their IPI numbers, because oftentimes if we're missing that information, it's hard for the PROs to pay them properly and track down who wrote on what song. So yeah, it's pretty important, I would say, for writers to register, especially if their songs are generating quite a bit of income.
Yeah, and also in today's world where everything's streaming, digital, new avenues of performance royalties are being created from Spotify, YouTube, things like that. So performance income is also coming from those sources. So it's not, in the old days it was radio, TV, and concerts. Now it's also Spotify, YouTube. All that flows through there as well. So, if you have your songs up on, digital platforms like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, it's best to register because you're leaving money on the table if you don't.
And something else that we frequently talk about in our writers' workshops is just the whole idea of stewardship. I know like a lot of money, business, and things like this sometimes feel like a bad word when you're in ministry circles because people think so much about charity and generosity. But to the point that you made, Jonathan, it really is incumbent upon songwriters to recognize that there is a level of stewardship that is associated with caring for your copyright and making sure that you cover the bases where your copyright is concerned, because ultimately that's not just a blessing to you, but it's a blessing in other ways as that song continues to travel. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Where can I find some basic royalty information for my country? So like statutory rates or things of that nature.
One of the websites I've found that might be helpful is an organization called BIEM, BIEM.org. And they are a resource. You can go there and click on their societies tab, and they have a list you can search it by country, and it should link you to the Mechanical Reproduction Society in that country. So hopefully that would be the place where you could go to find out country specific about rates or information like that.
Yeah, and it can be kind of a treasure hunt type situation to find that information. So you really got to dig. So in a lot of cases.
Yeah, sometimes it's just doing a lot of Google searches.
The all-wise, all-knowing Google.
What is the difference between the copyright of a master recording versus the copyright of the composition itself? So record label versus publisher royalties?
So when you think of the words and the music of a song, that is the song copyright. It's the composition. The only thing you can really copyright on a song are the words and the melody. That's what kind of defines copyright of a song. When that song is recorded onto a tangible asset, and intangible these days could be an MP3 or just a streaming video, anything like that. That performance that's kind of captured, that's the sound recording for the master is what we call it. That got copyright. So you have it's kind of two sides of one coin. The song can exist without the sound recording, but the sound recording cannot exist without the song copyright. So does that kind of explain it?
That was actually a great analogy. That was really helpful.
If someone wants to cover an Every Nation music song, what is the best way for them to do that legally?
Well, if you want to cover an Every Nation song, you should contact the publishing administrator, which would be Integrity Music. Or go through our administrator, capital CMG Publishing.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's what I would do.
And if you could elaborate on what that process might look like for somebody, because I know like one of the questions I've gotten since we've signed on is more the particulars of how this is going to work. So if someone were to contact you, what might that look like?
Typically when I'm getting requests from people, they're sending an email and they're letting me know what song they want to use or what master recording they want to use. And I'll ask them questions like, well, what is the use? How do you intend to use it? Are you distributing it in what form? Is it online? Is it making a CD? And when do you want to use it? I'll ask them questions, if you're making CDs, are you charging for them? How much are you charging?
Different companies will ask different things, but those are the basics.
Mm-hmm. What is the best practice for one of our Every Nation church bands to cover another Every Nation church band song?
Well, it's kind of the same process that Susan just went through. You'll want to make sure you have a license for the Every Nation song so that the writers can get paid, and so that every nation can collect their share, and it just helps fund the ministries basically. And some publishers, I don't know what Every Nation's policies, but some publishers don't charge the writers to record their own songs on their own recordings like that. I know Integrity, for our exclusive writers, when they want to record something for like an independent thing they're doing on their own, we give them kind of a gratis free permission, to do what they need to do. Because we're kind of in this thing together, the publisher and the writer. But as far as churches doing one Every Nation church doing a song from another Every Nation church, it's probably best to get a license. That way that other church can be honored in what they do, and it just feeds back into their ministry and into that writer's ministry, so they can keep creating new content and keep going forward with what the Lord's calling them to do. That's
actually all of our questions.
So now for the juicy part. Off script, just whatever is on your, well, because I guess the part of having you guys on with your expertise, the question becomes, working in a book publishing and administration office, like where you just, you're doing this all day long. What are some of the misconceptions or areas where people struggle the most with their understanding of copyright administration, or maybe bases that they just fail to cover that you see pretty regularly? Just anything that would be helpful to a church that's trying to cover their bases, but maybe certain things they just wouldn't think of off the top.
I mean, I would say the more providing their publisher, the more assets that they can as far as their works go is the best. Because I think that that's something we come across often, is missing lyrics or missing correct writer info or contact info for people. Because a lot of what I do, the struggle is getting a hold of people. I know Susan kind of comes across the same issue with licensing, and I think that writers need to know, like, if they're hoping to make some amount of money on their songs, they need to be contacted, because my issue is I'm trying to reach out to people to sign an agreement, but we can't get anything to them as far as registration matters and royalty payments, whatever, if I am not able to contact them. And
that struggle's real.
Yeah, it's a real struggle. Just like
those flighty creatives.
Seriously.
But here's a follow-up to that. So like one of the things I get frequently asked, especially from like our churches that are newer to songwriting and releasing music, is how do I set up publishing? Like that's a huge question that I get. Like if you mention the word publishing, they're like, okay, so what is that? Who is that? Who's supposed to do that part? And I'm like, you. So, but what does that look like? Like, how do we fill some of those gaps for a new church trying to understand that process?
Well, it's more than just saying I'm a publisher. So you have to actually create the publishing entity with the Performing Rights Association. So like ASCAP, BMI, CSEC, they each have their own process, and it does cost money to clear a name. But basically what you do is you contact them, say, I'm a publisher, I need to set up a publishing entity. They have this form you fill out. It's all online nowadays, but you have to submit 3 or 4 choices of what you want that publishing name to be called. Then they will take those names and they'll vet it against other publishing entities across the globe to make sure it's not going to conflict with somebody else's publishing name. And that's why they ask for multiple ones, in case the first choice that you have is the same or similar to another one in another country or in the same country even, because they want to try to mitigate confusion in reporting so that the right people get paid, and names have to be pretty unique. So they're going to clear those names. They're going to take a fee. from you. Like ASCAP, I think is only $50 to clear a name, but BMI is like $250, $300 to do one there. CSAC, I can't remember if they have a fee or not, but CSAC's pretty exclusive, so it's kind of hard.
Aren't they by invitation only? CSAC?
Yeah, they kind of loosened up a bit for a while, but now they've gone more strict again. But that's kind of the process, is making sure that name is cleared with the Performing Rights Association you are associated with. And that way they can assign that publishing entity what we call an IPI number. And that number is kind of like a fingerprint that goes along with that publisher, and it's used for identifying the publisher and matching funds from performances from radio, Spotify, YouTube to that publishing account.
Say another thing to emphasize on that is these PRO websites are big search tools, like they mentioned, and so if other people are going to be covering their songs, they're wanting to use them. If they might have heard about a song and the writer doesn't even know, they'll often go search on the PRO website. And just going back to like the more info available on more sites, the more likely income is going to be tracked for their songs.
Yeah, because I would say that probably one of the biggest challenges is when we start working with someone who says they're a publisher. They give us their publishing name and it doesn't show up in any database. So they haven't really cleared it. And so, and then when they go to clear it, that name doesn't clear because it's conflicting with someone else's. And then they're going to change the name they've been using for years. So
that sounds terrible. Wow. So yeah, any other insights? I mean, we don't want to hold you guys long, but any other, if you had maybe some final words for songwriters, for churches, kind of what would be some parting thoughts?
I think I just want to reiterate what you were saying earlier, Jonathan, about the importance of stewardship and also honoring the songwriters. In my career, I felt this need to champion the songwriter, especially with the church. Oftentimes, I'll hear from churches, well, why can't we use the music for free? It's, God's gift. We should be able to do whatever we want with it. Which, yeah, on one hand, but on the other hand, those songwriters, God gave them the gift of writing this music that you find valuable enough to use in your service or however. And I just always feel that, if God's given somebody a gift like that, they should be able to make a living off of that, just like a doctor, a lawyer, any other profession. So I'm all about making sure that the songwriter gets their fair share. And then they can do whatever they want with it. They can give it to charity. They can use it to further ministry. But that's my heart. I just want to see them get paid.
That's great. That's great. Ashley, you have any other? Amen. Yeah. Ashley, you got any other questions, thoughts, things that provoked you as we talk through this stuff?
I think just one thing, a lot of our church bands don't necessarily have their publishing company set up. And a lot of what we've done has kind of been based on good faith, kind of, verbal yeses, things like that. Just kind of moving forward, say if a church band doesn't have the ability to set up their publishing right now, what is kind of a best practice to just get kind of a legal, agreement for one church using another church's songs without kind of that foundational publishing in place.
Yeah.
Company.
So if the church, it depends on how the church is going to use the song. So if a church is going to record another church's songs in that scenario, and they put the recording up on Spotify or Apple Music, there's nothing really anybody can do because that licensing happens between Spotify and the publisher, and from Apple Music and the publisher. And so it's just going to leave money on the table. It goes into what we call a black box. And if it's not claimed after so many years, it gets divided up amongst publishers who are in the system. So basically you're giving your money to anybody out there who is getting paid from those places. if the songs are just being played in church services, you can get a direct agreement from that church. Say, hey, we're using your song. We want to use it in our church services, but we see it's not in CCLI, and they can give them a license for a fee or something, or they could just say, use it, be a blessing. A lot of people do that. If they're recording onto physical mediums like CDs or songbooks or anything like that, they can just work out an agreement between that church as well. And they can just either pay them whatever fee they negotiate, or they could just say it's a blessing and go in peace type thing. But with everything becoming more and more digital, it really is in the best interest of those churches to set up actual publishing entities, because there's really no way around it. That's the only way money's going to flow.
Awesome.
Okay, I have one final question. This is for Cara.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
I want to know, who is that baseball player on the wall behind you?
No. This is the problem with going to your parents' home. They don't get rid of you and your siblings' belongings. They're attached. This is my brother's room from growing up.
Oh, wow.
He
So
was
that's a
a
picture of
college
him.
baseball player. Yeah, so
Nice.
Okay. Not my spouse, just my brother. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun and it's been super helpful. I'm really, again, appreciative of you guys taking time out. I know that you guys are extremely busy, even though you're working remotely, and we deeply appreciate this time you've taken. I'm sure it's going to be a huge resource to our churches and songwriters out there moving forward. And finally, is it okay if we make you guys contact information available? Like additional questions if people are struggling or.
Yeah, we have a what we call a licensing email box that Susan and I both check pretty much daily. It's licensing@integritymusic.com.
Awesome.
It's pretty easy to remember. You can send questions there, and we'll get back with you as soon as we can on it.
Awesome. That's super helpful. Well, thank you guys.